Welcome to the Village of Buchanan, January 3rd, 2023 meeting. Please join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So tonight I'm going to do a little change on the agenda. I have asked Eric Singer, who is the director of EMS for the Portland Ambulance Corps, to speak with us, give us a little presentation this evening. But first, I'd like to play something.
Just give me a minute.
Staffing shortages since the start of the pandemic.
The beginning.
As we all know, every industry has dealt with staffing shortages since the start of the pandemic, but few shortages can mean the difference between life and death, but this one does. In tonight's Eye on America, CBS's Carter Evans studies what experts feel is a national health emergency.
You still see chronic pain?
Ms. Farnsworth lost her job as an EMT.
It's where I live today.
After 7 years on the job, he can no longer afford to keep doing it. What is your best salary that?
18.
$18 an hour.
To pay the bills, we have to work as much as we can.
Farnsworth actually makes slightly more than the national median wage for EMTs. The Bureau of Labor Statistics lists it as one of the lowest paying jobs in healthcare. That's the primary reason roughly a third of all EMTs quit in 2021. And the industry is having a hard time replacing them. A 2022 study found that 39% of part-time EMT and 55% of part-time paramedic positions went unfilled because of a lack of qualified candidates.
It's an absolute crisis. We have continual paramedics hitting the exit doors and leaving the field.
American Ambulance Association President Sean Baird says Medicaid's reimbursement for non-emergency transports, like moving a patient between hospitals or taking someone to dialysis, keeps wages low.
It can mean the difference of having an ambulance or not having an ambulance.
AMR, the nation's largest private ambulance provider, is ending non-emergency transport in Los Angeles County. They cite low Medicaid reimbursement as a major reason for a $3.5 million budget deficit in that market alone.
It's unsustainable.
To keep from losing employees like Denise, their manager Brian Napoli says a raise is in the works, but the company can't afford it long term. Medicaid reimbursements don't increase, they may also have to stop non-emergency response. How much does it cost you to make a run on average?
Over $250.
And how much do you get back?
$107 in the base rate.
A losing proposition. Next month, a California law goes into effect that can require a $22 an hour minimum wage for fast food workers. There is no mandated pay for EMTs.
Why is it that we can't get movement for the people that are serving our communities at their most vulnerable moments?
Leaving Denise Farnsworth at a crossroads.
I don't know what else I would want to do.
For Eye on America, Carter Evans, Los Angeles.
Thank you, Ismail.
Josh,
Oh,
it's
sorry.
time to focus on what you do best.
Yeah.
So go to wix.com/dropshipping.
Honolulu Emergency Medical Services.
There you go. Sorry about that. Okay.
Eric, would you like to come up to the podium? I just wanted to play that before. And tell us who you have with us.
Yeah.
This evening, too.
Good evening, happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
As most of you know who I am, my name is Eric Singer. I also have our assistant directors, Patty Singer and Barbara Fay here. They're also lieutenants and assistant directors. And we have a board of director, Bob Ferguson, who's actually my boss. He's here tonight. I've had many conversations with Teresa over the last year about a lot of things that are going on. And there are certain people in the community that have questions and ask questions about what we're doing, how we're doing, some comments about tax districts, number of calls, how we can do this, how we can. So basically, I told Trish I'd like to come up too and talk. I'll give you a quick view of what we've done, where we're at, how many calls we're making now, how we're doing it, based on the medic program we have and how we handle it all. If anybody has any questions further than this meeting, please reach out to me at the ambulance board. Bruce has my number. I'll be happy to give you my cell phone over the air here. It's up to you if you want it. And answer any questions. There's a couple of things we'll start off with. Now that you saw we're all desperate for money, we need more money, so we're gonna ask for more money. So over the year, volunteers are pretty much done. COVID put it to the end. It was getting less and less and less over the last few years. This past year, we have 2 active riding volunteers left that ride calls. One made 99 calls, the other one made 14 calls. So in the year, the board, our board, we talked to them, and the 3 of us who are directors said, volunteering is going out making a call 1 week, maybe not, maybe another week. We're doing hundreds of calls, hundreds of hours, and we said, that's not volunteering. So the board says, you're right, you should be paid for your time. So we said, okay, we'll become directors. And we'll run the organization on the operations side, we'll run the employees. Now, 2 years ago, I had about 12 or 15 employees on the roster who would pick up shifts. I am down to 6 active employees plus the 3 directors right now. To give you an idea, we usually would do about 1,100 to 1,200 calls a year in the Buchanan, Montrose, our district. We did 1,784 calls this year, right? Out of 1,780 calls, we personally did, the ambulance corps did 1,429 charts, which means we transported patients to the hospital 1,429 times. We had to go mutual aid. Mutual aid means we can't cover the call because we don't have a crew. 9 out of 10 calls that we looked up were because calls came in back to back. I can't be on a call right now, another drops in 5 minutes and cover that call. We don't have the staffing. Also, the nursing homes have gotten tremendously busy because there's no more private transports. It takes us 6 to 8 hours for a patient to be transported from the hospital to a nursing home. Now, the nursing home calls for abnormal labs, and we get a call because the private agency says, oh, we can't be there for 7 hours. Doctor gets on the phone, call 911. So we go to transport abnormal labs, which is not really a true 911 emergency yet, to the hospital, and we do it. And we also pair up a lot with our community on our mutual aids with Plank. We've paired up EMTs and drivers, and we go to Peekskill a lot because they are so busy now too that they're calling us out to go to them a lot. In Peekskill, we get a call, now we have to bring somebody else in. We do work with the paramedics where we split up calls, and the paramedic will be on the truck. One of our EMTs will take the fly car, go back to our headquarters, pick up an ambulance and meet another paramedic. Now the problem comes in where it's such a shortage, they're short of helping medics. There's only 3 medics covering Mohegan, Peekskill, and us. Our medic number 2 could be in Peekskill right now, and we have no medic covering this district, except our BLS crew, which is perfectly fine, we're doing it, but we can't always rely on having a paramedic being here first. Also, we will respond with the paramedics to all the calls except for psychiatric patients. They do not transport psychiatric patients, which we have to go to Phelps. My other point is we go to the hospital, we get to the hospital, everybody thinks, let's call the ambulance, we'll get in right away and see a doctor right away, we'll get our services. It doesn't work that way anymore. Has anybody been here to the hospital lately? They are so overcrowded. We will walk in and wait 30 minutes and we'll be invisible until they find us a bed. It could be in the hallway, it could be a chair, it could be a room, depends on the patient. Critical patients, we always seem to get them better. This is Phelps, Westchester Medical Center is the worst. Hudson Valley, wherever we go, it's a problem. I've talked to the state, they're on it. Other people have talked to them. We need the hospitals to cooperate and try to figure out how to get us out of their ER faster. Because if they can get us out faster, we can cover more calls. So these are the problems that we're having with everybody's having, whether it's New York, Pennsylvania, Florida, Texas, California. You can Google EMS shortage, you'll see it everywhere in the country. There's a list that came out through Westchester County for mutual aids, top, who needs them the most. I'm not going to go through that, but we weren't even on the list, which is, I think, is awesome. We're trying our best. We're very lucky in the village of Buchanan. Years ago, we set up the fire department to help us lift and carry and take patients out. So we are very lucky with the way we work with Buchanan and the fire department to help us when we only have one EMT and one paramedic. They're awesome. We were approached back in COVID if like Montrose wanted to come to all our calls and become a first response agency. We didn't allow it. In order for them to do it, I have to sign off. I can't have 20 people flying through the town, running to somebody's house to give service. If somebody here is sick, you don't want 20 people showing up at your house when you're sick or when one of your loved ones is sick. So we have to have a little privacy, a little decency, and most people would prefer 2 or 3 people max, and the police come. We have a good system. Buchanan, we've been doing it for so many years. It works fantastic. So that all happens. So that's been a blessing for us during the days in Buchanan. When we go to calls, a lot of people will call and say, I'm a member of service. Okay, we appreciate you're a member of service. Thank you very much. But they have to understand, and I'd like people who hear this to understand is, we're happy you're a member of service, but we're not going to treat you any differently or do anything any differently or get to you any faster based on that, we treat everybody the same, regardless of who it is. You probably never had a complaint about our service and how we treat patients in the village or in the town. We definitely try our best and we do the best we can. If you're a member of service and we can't get to you because we're in another ambulance call, there's nothing physically on earth that I could possibly do for that. As much as we try. We do go out of our way. The directors, the 3 of us, average 60 hours a week on top of our full-time jobs that we put in running the agency and covering all the shifts that are open because we don't have employees. And we cover the second EMT. So we'll have one EMT working right now, which we do. We get a call, one of us goes on the call with them to fill the crew, and then we pick up the second calls. So you're looking at 3 directors doing 60 hours each every 2 weeks. Every week, 60 hours, 120 hours every 2 weeks we're doing. So it's been a big task, a big burden on the system. Mutual aids this year, I don't think I said that was, so we went 172 times out of 1,700 calls. We had to bring mutual aid in. Out of that, 52 were cancels, meaning the paramedic got there and the patient didn't want to go for whatever reason. So only 120 people had to be transported in a second bus because we couldn't get there because we were on another call or we didn't have a full crew or there was psychiatric. So on 183 of the other calls that we've had are usually cancels or no patients and stuff like that. It's kind of hard to see. And out of the 183 calls that we didn't cover, a lot of it's Peekskill because we can't take 2 EMTs out of our district to transport a psych patient from Peekskill to Phelps and not have somebody in our district. So our policy is we have 2 EMTs working, one will go to Peekskill and ride with the paramedic, or they'll have to go to another agency and get a crew, because I have to make sure we have an EMT in this district to cover the calls. Real quick, tax district. Yes, we do get money from the tax district, from the whole area. Just so everybody's aware, we do not keep that money. It goes right into the paramedic program. We give a certain portion of our income every year to the paramedic program. And we've given more money than any other agency in this whole district in Mohegan or anything over the last years than anybody can count. That means they have a new fly car, which gets to you faster. We gave them an $18,000 piece of equipment called a Lucas for CPR to put in their fly car. So when they get to you first, they use our machine. It's our machine. We maintain it, but it's in their car. So when they get to you, a paramedic can do CPR and treat the patient before we get there in case we're coming a little bit later. So the tax district money, yes, we do get it, but no, we don't keep it. All the money that we run is from billing and our operations. We do not have parties anymore. We do not have breakfast anymore. We do not have anything to do other than maintaining our building, maintaining our ambulances, making payroll, and getting the best equipment we could possibly purchase. That's where our money goes, nowhere else. So that's what we're doing with the money. And payroll is up, obviously, and it's probably going to go up more. As you can see, you can't pay somebody in Westchester County $17 an hour. So we are now, our board approved, our EMTs are making pretty much the highest they can make in the county right now, as far as other agencies, or matching other agencies. So we have some really good employees. So that's how we do it all. I have things about like how many overdoses and stuff. Overdoses are really bad right now. The overdoses we're doing, we used to give 2 milligrams of Narcan, maybe 4. Now we're giving 16 milligrams of Narcan to bring somebody back. And we lost a lot of people during COVID in this village and our community overdosing on fentanyl during COVID. And we would save them 2 times, and the 3rd time we couldn't save them. But we're carrying more Narcan than we've ever carried before on those ambulances. And personal cars, our personal cars, we carry about 8 milligrams of Narcan. The police officers carry 8, and we're using them all. We're absolutely using them all. And they're training people to just give Narcan to somebody who overdoses. Well, that's all fair and good, but let's make it clear. If you don't do CPR and somebody's overdosing, they're not breathing properly, or you're not getting into the system, the Narcan is not going to do anything for them. So you got to do CPR right away. You give them the Narcan, and your safety is very important, but they don't teach you that in those classes. They just want everybody to be, hey, let's just shoot them up with Narcan. We'll save everybody. My question here is, we go to this room, you have somebody has some fentanyl pills, all the kids are partying, you're all going to take the same fentanyl pills, right? I have 4 milligrams of Narcan. I'm the designated driver. Who do I give it to when everybody overdoses? That's what we come across. Many times we go to one house and somebody's overdosed in a room, and then we have to go to 2 other rooms because there's other overdoses. Cardiac arrest, they're about the same. I can't say they're up or down. I think with the reports, I think we did like 24 cardiac arrests this year, which I think is pretty low considering 1,700 calls. Our biggest calls are psychiatric, the nursing homes, respiratory distresses, and overdoses are big ones. And psychiatric is way up, and people COVID really put people over the edge on psych. And you know that it's still a medical condition. You got to treat it that way. Anxiety, tremendous amount of anxiety patients we have. So that's what we're gearing towards. That's where the direction of everything's going. The good news is our board is tremendous. They're active. They look at everything that's going on, and they're willing to move in the direction to look at outside the box. And let's make this work. Like they said to us, no more volunteering. You get paid. You do everything. Now at least you're getting something for it. Now move forward. And you know, and it's geared pretty well in our system that we have. But we can't get volunteers. And my answer to people that want to know why we can't get volunteers and why we're not doing this, I have applications. Fill them out. Come spend 16 hours a week on an ambulance with us every week, volunteering. Go to 6 months of class and become an EMT to volunteer. Or if you want to drive, you still got to go to class and give us the time. And I will tell you what our answers are is, oh, I have something else to do. I can't ride tonight. I'm going to go out. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And we know the kids today, the teenagers, the 21 years old, some people are working 2 jobs to maintain, to try to survive because the rents are so high and everything. They're not giving us the time. They don't want to give us the time. They'd rather go home and play video games. And that's where EMS has really struggled. And EMS too, compared to fire, you'll have more volunteers. There's more to do in fire, more different things to do. EMS, you have one choice. You're going to go sit with a patient in the back of the ambulance vomiting. And a lot of people can't deal with that. And there's no, okay, then I'll just do this. Well, there's nothing else to do. You need to be right here. So that's some of our problems with volunteers, and we understand that. But I just want to clarify it because I know some people have made comments out there, you know, with tax district money and they're covering the calls. Yeah, we are covering our calls. If you go to Mohegan or Peekskill, you could triple the mutual aids that they're going because they don't have the crews or the manpower. And we're definitely making it happen. I can't promise you for how long, but I'm just hoping every year we'll just do the best we can.
But, you know, I did want to ask you a question. You had mentioned something about the Narcan and you're using more. Is that because you're seeing more fentanyl?
Yeah, it's stronger, and it's taken more Narcan to get it out of their system. And if we give Narcan, especially 16 milligrams, you're going to the hospital. You're going to need Narcan, because what happens too is some families will give Narcans to their kids who overdose and say, okay, they're awake, they're alert, and leave them. And then a couple hours later, they're back into their overdose because the Narcan doesn't last that long, and we have to come, and then they go to the hospital. We never RMA anybody or leave them if they overdose. They have to go. The police are 100% on board with that.
And thank you for mentioning, because in case anybody's interested in volunteering, and this is so important for our community. You get sick, you want to be able to pick up that call 911 and somebody's there to help you. I mean. The training to become an EMT, I'm glad you mentioned that was 6 months.
Yeah, about 6 months. You have to go down right now. We used to have classes in our building and there were classes all around the county. Now, basically, it's Westchester College or Phelps. There's only, no one's doing classes. It's not enough people. There used to be 20 people in a class. Now there's 5. And the paramedics become paramedics. And then they go to nursing school. And during COVID, a lot of EMTs and paramedics went to nursing school while working. And, they can work 3 days at the hospital as a nurse and make triple what they were making as an EMT or a paramedic. And the paramedic will say, well, to make what you're paying me, to have all that responsibility of having narcotics and giving medications and having license and having insurance, and I don't need this. And they're burnt out. Burnout is huge. Everybody's tired and they're burnt out. I mean, our system works because there's 3 of us that are directors and we share the burden of everything. So when one's tired or sick, the other 2 pick right up. Otherwise, we would be burned out too.
And I know the state realizes there's a problem. We have something called the New York Conference of Mayors. There's in the beginning of February. That's one of the things on the agenda. So I am going to that meeting and I'll report back to the board and I'll let you know what they discussed on that too.
Sure.
And another question I had for you, years ago, we had done a training about the ambulance corps for CPR. I'm just wondering if you still offer, we'll see who's interested, if you would still offer that for the community to train people on CPR.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we have to do it in our building because it's the carpeted floor and the mannequins are there. Everything is there for us and the teaching aids are there.
Okay.
So we will do classes. We have to come up with a system though, that will say, okay, 25 people want to come to take CPR. So we do the rowing club for the town. We do all the coaches for the high school. And the reason why we do the high school coaches is we actually work with them so that, like what happened Monday night, we are always at that high school when there's a football game, whether it's the varsity or the modified or JV. We have somebody there. The ambulance might not be sitting there, but one of us are there with the defibrillator always, because that's our biggest scare. That right there is the reason why we're at the school. So we teach a lot of CPR to those, the Cortland Little League coaches, we teach them the CPR. And we're willing to do it, but we have to have some kind of commitment, because what happens is when you do it for free and everything, okay, Saturday, we're gonna have a class at 9 o'clock, 25 people sign up, 1 person shows up. Because the other people get up and say, yeah, I really don't want to go. So we've done in the past is, we said, okay, look, $15, $20, write a check, when you come to class, we give you back the check. And it kind of gives them the incentive to go.
Total incentive.
Right, well, we'll give up our time, but if I'm gonna be there Saturday it takes about, a good CPR class with a lot of people takes about 3-4 hours max. That's all. We teach you more than CPR. We teach you how to handle emergencies, more than just compressions. Compressions I can do in 3 minutes. But we teach you a lot of stuff, anxiety, overdoses, compressions. We teach you all the different things. But if we want to have people come, we're absolutely willing to do it for free. But we have to try to figure out a way to make sure people show up.
All right, because I think it's important, because when you have an emergency and I can verify you guys have been phenomenal. I mean, especially in the village, the police department is there, the fire department, they've been phenomenal. And then, you guys show up relatively quickly. So, you don't know until you're in a situation, an emergency situation.
Right.
And you really want to be able to help your relative or whoever is in your household or anybody, you could be out somewhere. So I personally think it's important that we all have some kind of basic knowledge in case, there's an emergency that arises, I know you guys are coming, I know cavalry is coming, but in the meantime, sitting there waiting, watching the clock, it's good to have that training,
Something as simple as learning how to give baby aspirin when somebody has chest pain and you're waiting for us to come can make a big difference.
Mhm.
Yeah, and the police in Buchanan, we give them, they have our oxygen tanks in this part. So they always have full tanks. And if they show up on scene and use it, we just give them one of ours and take ours back and swap it right out to them. They have everything they need. And they have access to the radios to us too, to talk to us immediately on scene if they get on scene if something's wrong. But we teach, when we do our CPR class, we teach how to give aspirin. We teach how to do a lot of things that could absolutely prevent the emergency from getting any worse. I always say, let's teach you how not to do CPR. That's the goal.
Yeah,
But if you
No,
have to do it, we will teach you how to do it.
thank you. No, it's important. It's important. Thank you.
I got one question for you. In conjunction with the Conference of Mayors, yearly, our legislators reach out for us at the beginning of the New York State legislative session to ask us if there's legislation we would like to sponsor or we would like them to get on board with. Is there any specific legislation that you know of or that's being drafted that you would like us to advocate for?
I'm not sure. They have volunteers. They have a retirement program, which is now, I think, up to $30 a month if you can get it as a volunteer.
Well, yeah, that's already been adopted by the
Yeah.
state. It's up to the individual taxing districts to adopt it. We did that for the fire department. The kind of legislation that I was thinking of is maybe where emergency responders wouldn't go to the nursing home calls that you're talking about, that they would use the emergency response for true emergencies, not just transports, not that somebody is late for the dialysis. You know, so if we were to get some kind of legislation like that, it would soften the blow for emergency response and force those other institutions to provide their own transportation.
Right, so what happens is, companies like Empress and Westchester EMS. Westchester EMS is a little more proactive than most of them. We're actually in talks with him right now, on having an ambulance. He's doing some transports out of Hudson Valley, and the ambulance will be locally here all the time with 2 EMTs or a paramedic and EMT. And we're actually in talks with them, putting them on our first duty mutual aid, because they'll come professional. There's 2 EMTs. So if I can't get a crew out, instead of taking Brook Pike out of service or Croton or Peekskill out of service, they'll be in the area anyway. They'll pick up more of the nursing homes. The problem is they don't have the staff. So even if you said we don't have to do these type of calls, it's not gonna happen because the staffing and the nursing home staffing, everything is so low that when the doctor says to the nurse, call 911, she has to call 911 and we have to respond. And some of these emergencies that we say they're not emergencies to us are an emergency to somebody else. So it's kind of hard for us, since we've been doing it for so long, to say, you called us for a 911 call. We're like, that's well, not an emergency, but to you and your family, it is an emergency. Nursing homes, you know, sometimes when we go to nursing homes, you know, we were bringing the dogs there before COVID and we were doing the whole thing with the ESA dogs and everything. And then we go back with the stretcher and it makes such a big difference. But, you know, even those are family members, those are families, those are mothers, and fathers and stuff, and grandparents. Sometimes I prefer to go get them and get them help. So they have a better chance going to the hospital than sitting there for 8 hours. So I don't know if that's gonna change, and these big companies are paying less and they're getting worse. It's a very difficult situation. I don't think there's anybody that I know of in the industry that has an answer to fix the problem yet. I know we need more EMTs. I know the state gave us an extra year because of COVID. Maybe the certification should, instead of 3 years for EMT, should be 5. Even though we train and we get certified, you know, every 3 years, maybe keep it at every 5 years. And give our EMTs more chance to stay in the business than to have to worry about every 3 years recertifying.
Well, if you could think of something that we could help out to advocate for, I'm sure you guys have tons of meetings with other agencies, and I know you're a member of many different agencies, so if you can call those thoughts together, maybe we could put something together that's cohesive where we can advocate.
You know, that's great. I appreciate that. Yeah, I'll start asking some questions and, I think what happens with us is we're just so absorbed into, we just gotta get this covered. And, you know, we kind of lose what you're saying. So yeah, definitely I'll look into that.
Thank you.
Get that.
Definitely have to prepare for the future. And the NICOM meeting is the legislative conference, so that's why that's one of the things on the agenda. Thank you so much. Thank you for everything you do, Patty and Barbara. Thank you. You guys are like phenomenal. And tell all the other members, thank you for everything that you do for our community. And also our fire department. Thank you, Chief. Okay, next comments from the floor, agenda items only, or any other comments?
Is the accessory apartment legislation on the agenda?
What we're gonna be doing is setting up, the public hearing
Next month.
for next month.
So take the comments for next month.
Yeah, I think it would be better to combine it all together. So my thought.
That's
But if
good.
you have any burning comments, of course, we'll take them.
I mean, I think it's stuff that's.
There you go, Mike.
Come on up to the mic. All right, I'll put it this week.
Same rules for everybody.
Just going through it, I see that there was a rewritten version of the accessory apartment, well, a lot of good changes in there that I remember from the other discussions. I also want to say that I watched the meeting online and I don't, we've always had problems. It's very hard to understand people. I don't know if anybody's watched the meeting on the website, but the volume is fine, but everything is like muted, like you've got a cotton, like your mouth's full of cotton candy or something. Very like, you know, that kind. So I don't know, we should, I think we improved that quality a good bit. I don't know if it was just that particular recording. But
Oh,
anyway,
you know, and Nick, I'm sorry, we did have the last meeting.
The last meeting.
Workshop meeting, because we didn't have. our
Yeah,
normal-
Yeah, we had an issue in the beginning of the last meeting.
oh, so it might have just been that.
Yeah.
One, okay. The couple of things quick, if you're going to get an application from somebody that you know, one of the things on here has to do with parking spaces and following the code. What happens if somebody that's in one of these houses that doesn't even have their own parking spaces, you know, along the center of the village, near the circle, some of the smaller lots and people are parking, you know, have made little pullouts off the curb. What happens if somebody comes, are they automatically ineligible for an accessory apartment?
Have to have off-street parking, right?
And that's only half the year. So that was one question. And another thing, the text says that one of the things to be considered by the planning board would be the total number of accessory apartments existing in that neighborhood in relationship to the number of houses. Have we ever done that? You know, is that actually done? I mean, because that's in the text, but it sounded like something that was never really done. For the most part, I think it's good. I think a lot of more clear, you know, a lot of the wording is more clear. A lot of archaic wording and terms that should not have been there have been taken out. So generally, I think it's good. But I think, the other question, one last question, under the revocation of special permits, it says that that the revocation should be after a hearing held by the Board of Appeals.
Should be the planning board.
Okay, because I was wondering why it said Board of Appeals,
Right.
instead of a planning board.
Yeah.
To hold the hearing, it sounded, okay, so that was just more or less a typo, or that was corrected already? Okay, that's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, under new business, I'm gonna be making a motion to open the public hearing. Oh, well, let me make a motion to open the public hearing overriding the New York State property tax cap, and I have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so this is something we do every year. The state has a tax cap, and because of the things that we're dealing with the closure of Indian Point, we have not been able to meet that tax cap. I think it's, what, around 2%?
Or it could be lower than 2% depending on CPI for the year. Maximum is 2%.
So unfortunately, we have not been able to attain that. But working towards that eventually, once we get through this closure.
And may I just
Sure,
add something to this?
absolutely.
But by doing an override doesn't mean that you don't have to meet it. If there's a time in the future we could meet it, this actually protects us in case we can't meet it. So it's better to do this and decide a caution than not doing it, and then we don't meet it. So I just want to make sure everything's there. But I've done this in every place I've been, and some years we were able to meet it, but we still do the override to be on the safe side. It's a safeguard, exactly. Thanks.
Any comments from the board?
No. Public.
Okay,
Public hearing.
and that, okay, I just wanted to offer to the board first. And then public, anybody have any comments with the public hearing being open on this? No comments?
And no hands raised over Zoom.
All right, so if there's no comments or questions, I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing to override the New York State property tax cap.
Second,
All in favor?
aye.
Okay, I'm going to read a resolution that will adopt local law number 1 overriding the property tax cap. Whereas the state legislature and the governor enacted legislation and that establishes a property tax levy cap on the amount that a local government's property tax levy can increase each year. And whereas under this law, the total amount to be raised through property taxes charged on the municipality's taxable assessed value of property will be capped at 2% or the rate of inflation, whichever is less, with some exceptions. And whereas the state legislation provides for local governments to override the cap to protect the village from unforeseen financial circumstances. And whereas state legislation requires that in the event that an override is necessary, the law enabling it must already have been adopted by the Board of Trustees. And whereas local law introductory number 1 of 2023 has been drafted to override the property tax levy cap, right? Law enacted by state legislature if necessary, and whereas a public hearing was held and closed on January 3rd, 2023. Now therefore be resolved that the Village Board of Trustees hereby adopts local law number 1, 2023 to override the property tax levy cap, law enacted by state legislature. Be it further resolved that the village clerk can be and hereby is directed to enter said local law in the minutes of this meeting and the local law book of the Village of Buchanan, and to give due notice of the adoption of said local law to the Secretary of State to the state of New York. Okay. On a motion to approve this, can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so approved. The next is a motion call for a public hearing on February 7th, 2023 regarding lot coverage. Okay.
And just for the boards, I actually, David was nice enough to do a resolution. I
Right.
passed it around to everybody so you can take a look at it.
Okay. So I am then going to read the resolution. Thank you. Whereas Article 7, Section 21153 of the Code of the Village of Buchanan provides for the process and procedures for amendments to the village's zoning code, and accordingly a draft of proposed zoning text amendments to modify lot coverage as provided in the schedule of bulk regulations. The proposed action has been prepared for the village board review. And whereas on December 20th, 2022, at a regularly scheduled meeting, the board did review and discuss the proposed zoning revisions. And whereas the village board under section 700 New York State Village Law and Article 12, section 21153 of the Code of the Village of Buchanan is the only duly authorized legislative body that has the authority to approve the proposed action. Now therefore be resolved that the village board, given its exclusive authority to amend the zoning code, does hereby declare itself to be the lead agency under seeker for the review and environmental determination for the proposed action. Be it further resolved that the village board does hereby schedule a public hearing to be held at Village Hall on February 7th, 2023, in which all members of the public are invited to participate. Be it further resolved that the village board does hereby direct the village clerk to circulate a public hearing notice for the proposed action along with this resolution. The proposed zoning amendments and other related material to the following list of interested agencies: Village of Buchanan Planning Board, Town of Portland, City of Peekskill, Westchester County Department of Planning, New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, and be it further resolved that a copy of the proposed zoning amendments will be available on the Village of Buchanan website for public review and comment. Okay, so
Yes.
can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Question,
Oh, I'm sorry, I have a question.
is there a reason why the zoning board is not being notified or consulted on this zoning thing?
They could be added to the list of
Okay.
agencies.
Yep.
Does our code ask for their input on zoning changes?
I know the code specifically asks for the planning board's review and recommendation. I don't know that the code specifically asks for the zoning board's review and recommendation on zoning text amendments.
I don't,
I'd have to look.
Yeah, I didn't get this resolution until today. We
Right.
had we had this to talk about tonight. We didn't have the lead agent part of it. And say again?
That was today. Yeah, you just got that.
So we've had this in time, I wouldn't be able to review the code, but I believe there's other requirements for the zoning section amendment by the zoning board and the planning board.
I don't think there's.
Yeah,
any
yeah, we
harm
can-
to add
We'll send it to
zoning
them,
board.
absolutely.
All right,
Yep.
Okay, so let me
We'll add zoning board to that, yeah.
add zoning board to that.
and if I'm not mistaken, our code also speaks about getting a written opinion when there's a seeker involved in a zone change.
Mhm.
Zoning text amendment, I should say. We can review that.
Absolutely, we'll check it.
All right, because we can have the public hearing, because we have the draft information, but we might not be able to have a resolution if we don't have a written determination from those boards for consultation.
Mhm.
All right,
Yeah, we might not have that in time for the February 7th meeting, you're right. Yeah,
Well,
we can leave the- we can leave the
we can have the public hearing,
Yeah.
absolutely, but
Yeah.
usually when we have the public hearing, we have a
Yes, rather
a
separation.
resolution to adopt those
Yep.
proposed zone changes. But I think when we're using a seeker and we're doing a zone change, I think our codes talks about having written determinations from either the planning or zoning board prior to adoption of the change.
Yes.
Mhm.
All right,
So, yeah, we'll open it up, and if we need to.
You can always
keep
adjourn it.
on For another month,
Yeah.
we will do that, thank you. Okay, so we've added the zoning board. I've asked for a second.
So their meeting, they could get it done.
All
before
in
the meeting.
favor?
Yeah,
Aye, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
absolutely.
So the next is, I'm going to make a motion to schedule a public hearing on February 7th, 2023 regarding, what's scheduled?
Oh, so, yeah, you're right.
It's accessory
No
apartments,
problem,
right?
yeah, I don't think we had a resolution for the accessory apartment.
No,
No,
We're on lot coverage.
We already approved it.
yeah,
Now we're accessory.
okay, all right, so, can I have a second
No.
to schedule that public hearing for February 7th
Second.
for accessory apartments?
Second.
Okay, okay.
On the question.
On a question, sure, go ahead.
Several months ago, when I asked to talk about this
Oh, okay.
legislation, it was my intent to make this an easier code to follow. There has been a lot of stuff that's been added to this that is arbitrary. There's references to the local waterfront revitalization plan that it has to be followed. The LWRP is not even an approved document, it's not a law. It also talks about following the master plan, that's a 20-year-old document, that there again, is not a law. It talks about the harmony of the village and the harmony of neighbors for future development. That's an arbitrary condition that can't be followed. There's contradictions all throughout this. In one section, it says you have to own your property for 5 years or 3 years before applying. In another section, it says that the special permit is terminated upon change of ownership. And then the next section, it says the new owner has to apply to the planning board. That can't be followed. Another section, it tells you that when you change ownership, you have to evict your tenant within 60 to 90 days. That can't be followed. My total intent was to make this an easier document to be followed, and with all of these add-ons, it's making it extremely difficult to follow. 20 years ago, we had an estimate of around 35 to 40 apartments. 10 years ago, they said it was 20. Last 6 months ago, they said 18. And I believe, Mr. Cook, you told us last month that you received 10 requests to remove the accessory apartment. So that would say that how many do we have now?
Yeah, about 18.
18? So did you receive
We have
10?
32. They're not requests, they just never had it when the relative passed away and they stopped using it.
So we still have 18.
Yeah, technically, we have 18 out of the 32 that we have.
So
That we had on document file for 7 years and nothing inspected, that I found 10 of them not being used.
so technically there's 8.
There's 18.
Okay.
There were 32 down to 28, and 10 of those have not been used in over 7 years.
Okay. Anyway, I think that you know, there's gonna be some legislation coming down from the state that's gonna make this basically a useless law, and I would rather just abandon this whole process right now. Because this law definitely did not meet the intent that I had, and I don't see how these things can be followed. I've looked for the minutes of the meeting that occurred between the three boards. I wasn't able to attend them. I haven't been able to find out where some of these things came from. You know, I don't know why you would want to follow the LWRP for an accessory apartment. What terms are in the LWRP is there that we would have to follow? Nobody could follow that. So if we approve this legislation as it's written, as the law is that we're gonna have a public hearing on, this law can't be followed. You know, and there's no definition, there's arbitrary terms that are open for interpretation. I would just rather just get rid of the whole thing and abandon. That's my comment.
I thought it was a pretty good meeting. All three boards got together, the planning, zoning board and the village board. I thought it was a good flow of information, and I'd like to actually see more of the three boards getting together to discuss some things in the village.
So maybe help me out, why is the
I
LWRP?
didn't have much of a problem with the law as it was, to be honest with
Okay.
you. My only concern with it was the financial end of it.
Yeah, that was the first thing I wanted removed, and that was non-controversial whatsoever.
Yeah, that was something I was like, I don't think we have the right actually to do that. I mean, if we want to change it to address that one section of it. I know, we have the state doing their thing soon, and I don't know where that accessory dwelling unit thing is gonna end up. I'm not sure. You're right. That could really change the face of this whole thing. I don't have a problem continuing it to address the financial piece of that. But that's, my thought on it. I don't know what the rest of the board's thought would be pertaining to that.
I wasn't able to make the three board meeting, so I don't really have much input from what they said. I do know that you came out of it very happy with the outcome. I know there was a lot of input. We drew up this new law that you're talking about. I was not there. I did not hear it. But you seem very excited about it. Danny and Steve were there as well. I do know the financial part you're talking about. That does seem to be ridiculous. It needs to be removed. Other than that, the other laws that you guys, that you wanted to add on are what you guys came up with the three boards together.
That's correct.
And I think that they need to come to the public hearing and say what they need to say as well.
Okay.
That's fine.
So we'll still leave the public hearing.
Sure, we'll leave the public hearing, yeah, we'll just make the comments, maybe we can amend the law.
Yeah.
But as it's written now, I would encourage any of the people who have accessory apartments to come in, because this is gonna change their approval process.
Let's even get the
Thank
copy. Oh, we're good.
Can we put the notice in the newsletter, since we're setting the public hearing, you can send it out?
Well, for both public hearings.
February,
Yeah.
The February newsletter, yeah, Sharon's in your, every time there's a public hearing schedule, we put in the newsletter.
Sure,
Sharon
okay.
stays top of that, absolutely.
Thanks.
All right, so, you did that on a question, right? Sean?
Yeah.
So to set the public hearing, I would need a second on that.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, perfect, thank you. The next is, Marcus, I want you to discuss, the appraisal and surveyor for the village owned property on the corner of Blakely and 9A.
I'm sure, the request of the board, we were trying to sell two pieces of property, two parcels, that's on the corner of Blakely Avenue and Route 9A. At their request, we got a real estate agency, Joe Laportis, who actually then came back, says you really should get an appraisal done, so we know what the price, but we have to sell it at fair market value. And to get fair market value, it'd be good to have an appraisal, so a survey, so we know how much property has to be done. So I requested the board, I actually reached out to a couple of appraisers and a couple of surveyors. And I gave you guys the proposals. And, after the first time around, there was some higher prices, so I reached out some more people, and I think we've got a better price. I gave you guys a memo on the lowest cost from each. Both of them are very good companies. There's no issue regarding to the work they do for us. So it's up to the board to see if you want to go move forward and retain those services. And then get that information to Bill Reporter so they can market the property or not, to leave it alone. So it's up to the board, whatever you guys want to do. At this point.
So you have two companies.
Correct.
I don't have in front of me. Okay.
Yeah, you have them in
I think
front of
Beatty
you.
and Watson was the lowest she gave us, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep,
I believe that was the one. I'm all for it, go for it. I mean, we needed to sell it,
right.
so, I mean, you're asking for my opinion. I mean, I think it's a good idea.
Cool.
Okay,
And
so-
the other company was violation, what was the, for the,
Yeah, Beatty and Watson was the low bidder.
for the
Uh,
survey.
Mm.
And then I don't know if in front of me, I forgot to bring it up. It was, I forgot the name of the other company.
Well, we did have an issue with the pricing for being staked. One guy wanted a certain amount, another guy wanted a ton of money, which brought up his entire bid price.
Correct. So we got, yeah,
So,
we got somebody cheap, we got somebody a little lower price.
and he's got a stake.
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
good.
yes. So so that one's actually, both were lower the prices than we had before.
So it's the wooden stake and is also the metal? that
Correct.
goes
If
with
it's
that?
a rock, they'll mark the rock. Yeah, they,
Okay.
yeah. Mhm.
Good, that's the way to do
I
it.
think it was 3,000, right?
Yeah,
Surveyed and pinned, it was 3 grand.
that's correct. Yeah, good memory. I'm sorry, I didn't bring it up with me. I thought I did.
So I'd like to make a motion to approve the appraisal and survey for the Village Point property on Albany Post Road and Blakely Avenue. And I have a second.
Second.
All in favor,
Oh,
a
question.
question?
Can you put the guy's name?
It was Beatty and
Beatty and
Watson.
Watson.
Put the
And
contact.
do you have a copy of the email?
I
Don't have it.
You might have to put a hold on that, sure. I know as I was reading. it,
I'll
I
look
said,
for
well,
it.
need
I will
the
come back
name.
to it.
So-
Say not to exceed 3,500.
Yes,
So
that'd be-
we could fit in the guy. We'll have to write it
Yeah.
down.
We can
Yeah.
come back to that.
And I can put the name in the minutes if you want to. Okay.
All right, when you get that, we'll
Okay.
come back to this, so we're not gonna vote on that right now.
Okay.
So we talked about the boiler, we have to replace the boiler here. And we're going to be putting in a new gas boiler. So Marcus, could you just
Sure,
go over,
sure.
we're rejecting the original bid?
Yeah, after a lot of work with Con Edison and finally getting the gas line actually installed, we actually got it tapped and we got the valve in. The next step was to get a company to actually do the boiler replacement. Went out to bid, we got 4 bids. The lowest of the 4 bids was $214,000, which was substantially higher than we anticipated. Talking to the village engineer on this project, he recommends that we reject the bids and probably rescope it out with a different kind of boiler system that might be able to reduce the price. But have both options, one with the conventional boiler and one with a high efficiency boiler, and maybe we'll get better prices. And that's his recommendation at this point. And I think it's worthwhile. The prices was extremely high. It surprised all of us.
Yeah, because we had,
High with everything.
what did we have in our capital fund again?
165,
Yeah, so it's a little out of range. Okay.
yes.
And that doesn't include all the other.
We still have to do the trenching, we still have to do the
Tank
backfill.
tank.
We- The tank, and at the tank, we actually could leave it in place with some kind of fill we have to do. That's not included that either, so. Yeah, so there's a couple other options, absolutely. Anthony's absolutely correct. That's gonna actually then increase the price even more.
And you know what, considering the boiler that we have, how many years old is that?
They don't build them the way they used to anymore.
This building was
Like-
from what, 1976?
I don't think that's the original boiler.
It's an antique.
Yes,
we'll
it is.
say. So no matter what we put in there, I'm sure it'll be much more efficient than. what we
Yes,
have.
that's
Well, it's
correct.
gonna be gas, it'll be a tremendous amount.
Not efficiency, exactly.
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion to reject the bids for the boiler replacement project.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right, the next one is an easy one. It's stating polling places and hours for the village election, and then we have village election coming around again in March. So whereas the next general village election shall be held on Tuesday, March 21st, 2023, and whereas according to New York State election law 15-104 sub 3, the Board of Trustees of the village shall adopt a resolution which states the polling place in each election district and the hours during which the polls shall be open. Now be it therefore resolved that the polling places for the next general village election for District 1 and number 2 are located in the community room on the 2nd floor of the municipal building, 236 State Avenue, Buchanan, New York. Be it further resolved that the hours with which the polls shall be open will be between the hours of 6 a.m. and 9 p.m. So, can I have a motion to approve?
Make the motion. Oh, second, whatever. it was.
Whichever, I'm okay, I'm
Okay.
okay either way, I'm flexible. And we'll take Sean's motion, can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, have we found that yet?
Yeah, I actually need to try to find it for me too.
Okay, all right, well, I can,
I have it, but I can just pull it.
okay,
Like I said, if we say maximum 3,500,
yeah.
our guy falls in, we're all right.
I appreciate that.
And
Yeah,
Bait-
we can do
and
that.
we'll do Beatty and
Yeah, I
Watson,
believe it was 2,000.
Yeah,
the appraiser. and
Yeah.
the appraiser.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
right,
we can close,
Okay.
all we have to do is vote on it. We have. a second.
Right.
okay. All right, all in favor on that motion to approve the appraiser and the surveyor,
Not to exceed 3,500.
not to exceed $3,500.
That's the motion.
Okay, can I have a second?
second.
All in favor?
All right.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
You're all done.
We'll get that,
Thank you.
we'll get that furnace all set up there one of these days, all right? Justice reports, I'm gonna do information of officers and departments, justice reports for November 2022. Let's see, the amounts, $6,714. Police report, November 2022. Received and filed. Highway report, November 2022, household garbage, 88 tons, bulk and dumpsters, almost 8 tons. Bag leaves, 8.73, a busy time of the year, 8.73 tons, almost 9 tons. Metal, 0.67 ton, leak vac, 1,209 yards. E-waste, 10 TVs, 2 monitors. Okay, wastewater plant, report received and filed. Building Department, November 2022. Thank you for coming to the meetings, Peter. And I see you've been a little busy. Thank you. Let's see. Buchanan Engine Company, November 2022, EMS Assist 6, Automatic Alarm 2, Mutual Aid 4, and carbon monoxide alarm 1, so a total of 13 calls. We also have the prosecutor's report, December 2022. Attorney's report, Stephanie, what do you have for us this evening?
I have one matter for executive session and we had an email exchange with AMS this morning. So the petition should be submitted. I would say very quickly.
Okay, good.
I think the holiday kind of delayed it, but we had a couple of meetings, they're all on board with, so they should be submitting that, I would say within the next week or so.
Okay,
You know,
that's
that's
good.
all.
Okay, great.
And I have one thing for executive session.
Okay, good. Thank you. Administrators report. Marcus, what do you have?
Nothing for today unless the board members have any questions. Anything.
You're kidding.
Wow.
Sorry.
I'm speechless.
Me too.
Okay, trustees report. Sean, we'll start with you.
That's right.
Mark, I was just wondering if we can contact the town of Cortland. As you know, we had that meeting with the quorum of the town board members about the waste water IMA. So we should get a minute for that meeting, even though it was just a meeting to open public hearing, not a public hearing, open a public meeting, go into executive session and we close it. So we should get a copy of those minutes because the forum board was there, just for approval for our record.
Okay, no problem.
And the supervisor is the one that kept the minutes. So
Gotcha, okay.
we get a point of contact.
Perfect. Thank you.
Also, I'm not sure if the rest of the board members got an email. I got an email from, I think it was the Westchester County, where they were talking about they don't have the ability to remove recyclables from plastic bags. I don't remember where I got it. I know I got it through my email. And I also had a couple of calls from some residents. Maybe they got the same kind of email. What process do we have? Or is there an issue within the village of our recyclables, whether it's paper or plastic, being picked up by us? And has the county been giving us any pushback? Because if you I'm sure some people put all their paper in a plastic bag when it's raining, whether that's legal or not, and what can we do if we're having an issue with that?
First of all, you're absolutely correct. When I was in other communities, the county actually reached out to other communities, say, do not put your recycling place in plastic bags, you'd be in the containers that we gave out to everybody. But we have not received any notice from the county about that, but I think it's a good point. We can put that in a newsletter as
We
well.
put it in newsletter. I know we've had this
Sending-
kind of
yeah.
issues before. We never wanted our garbage men or anybody in our sanitation or highway to be code enforcement. Well, with the building inspector going around. Sometimes we put stickers on garbage cans and we took your stuff even though you weren't supposed to do it this way. Things like that. We used to put stickers on things, but we still picked it up. I just, when the county sent something to us, I thought maybe we were having an issue because they can refuse to take our waste.
Absolutely.
We don't want our guys in there cutting up plastic bags all day either.
Yep, yeah, absolutely. I'll talk to Scott about that tomorrow when I see him, see if we have any issues with that. We have not received any notice from it, but I think it's a good thing. We should follow what our residents, absolutely.
Also, I was wondering what the update was of the license agreement for the land that we own on White Street. Or we just should put up a fence and say you guys can't use our land for free without any insurance.
Last I heard, there was an offer that perhaps we wanted to sell it. I reached out to the attorney and suggested that perhaps the license agreement was the better way to go. She was away for a week, and I actually heard from her today saying she's waiting to talk to her clients because she had made that offer and she was asked to. So I sort of encouraged her to pull back on that because there was no guarantee that her client would be the winning person, and we've led them on for a year now to say we've given the license agreement. So that was my thought process. And I think that's what she's going to follow. Once that's done and she confirms it, we've got the agreement. I'm waiting on an exhibit or two,
Right.
which I don't have. I think she does have it, the other attorney, but I'll follow up and see. She was away in Maine for 10 days or something.
So yeah,
The
I'm just
attorney.
worried the longer this goes on, there's
Yep.
more of a liability because it's our insurance and the cars.
Mhm.
It did
Yeah.
take a long time for them to come up with a license agreement. That's
Yes,
true.
that's correct.
All right. Also, I just want to mention that I attended the seniors Christmas party the other day. They have a good following. There's a lot of good people there. Everybody who's 55 and older can join the seniors. They're dying for new members, like everybody wants new members for everything, whether it's fire, EMS, seniors, you name it, what people are looking for. American Legion, we're dying for people to come in too. So, just come on down, get an application, and you can learn a little bit of history from some of the old timers, and you can carry it on. And that's all I have today. Thanks.
All right, thank you. And I understand you became a member too? of the
Last
team?
year.
Oh, good, good. Oh, that's nice.
55 last year.
Oh,
Yep.
okay. Steve, what do you
Yes.
have for us?
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to touch base again on the water rate issue. I'm still receiving some calls from residents. I'm just concerned about the rate. So Cindy was kind enough to provide some information with some of the bills, and from what I see, and I may not have all the information, and Marcus, please, help me understand it, better, but based on what I see, we're being charged by Montrose Improvement District at a rate of $6.60 per 1,000 gallons. We charge our residents at a cubic foot rate. So 100 cubic feet, that the equivalent of that would be $4.94. So it's an 84% increase that we're charging to the residents. And I need to find out how to justify that. Our rates went up from, $7 to $9, if there's any way that we can explain that better to our residents.
One major reason, like I probably stated before, is that there was a substantial amount of extra revenue coming in from Indian Point that's no longer coming in. That's a big number that it doesn't really show unless you actually looked at the detailed numbers that you got from Indian. If you look at Indian Point's billings, you can see how much they've decreased over time, but that was based on estimated numbers. So we really don't know how much was really being used, but the 2 meters were not working for at least 10, 15 years, if I remember correctly. So we lost a substantial amount of revenue coming from that. Now the meters are finally fixed. They were finally fixed probably just after the budget year that we're working in right now. So now we actually have actual readings. So I had to estimate or guess what the actual loss would be. And looking at the prior year's budget, we actually had a surplus of $100,000. So we were very close to not breaking even or even losing money on that aspect. And that $100,000 included the extra revenue coming in from Indian Point.
But the fund balance as of 2021, according to the audited statements, is $810,000. Is that correct?
No, that's not, you're not looking, there's $300,000 that's set aside
Mhm.
that's untouchable.
Right.
Correct.
So
So
the other 500,000.
that $300,000 goes back about 15 or 20 years. That has not been touched, and that's actually set aside. Again, the board, we can discuss this during the budget cycle. That was set aside by a resolution by the board back in 1980 something. It was set aside specifically for emergency purposes only. That can actually be absorbed now into regular fund balance if that's what the board wants to discuss. So I wanted to have a more detailed discussion for the water fund coming next year, especially now the Indian Point is no longer in the effects anymore. The $300,000 we could discuss if that should be put for capital projects, so that could be put into fund balance. And then use that to offset next year's tax water rate increases. That's one option. The other thing we discuss is the industrial users. The rate structure we have right now, we can actually increase the industrial users by when you go over a certain amount of gallons or cubic feet per year. So that way it doesn't affect the residents, the bigger users, which actually affects us more, we pay a little bit more. So some other communities have that as well. So what I'm trying to say is that if you look at last year's financial findings, it was $100,000 with the Indian Point extra revenue. Again, it's a guess to the budget. I'll be able to actually have more detailed numbers for this year's budget when we have discussion. I know we normally focus just on the village general taxes. I think it'll be a good year to look at the water rates more closely coming up, because now we actually I'll be able to give you analysis of what the actual readings were from Indian Point, who was a big user. Besides that, it's the sheetrock company is a big user. We have though, and that's also and that's easier to be determined because we actually have meters not working there. So the biggest issue was Indian Point. So I cannot tell you specifically dollar for dollar how much Indian Point would have cost us, but now I can, because now we have actual readings.
And in 2020, the water purchase decreased by 415,000. That was also within the audited statements. So, I mean, we knew that the water purchase was decreasing. And actually in 2021, we increased our revenue budget by over 700,000. Even though the water purchase was decreased by 400,000. So it just seems like, we're just carrying too much of a fund balance there. And I still don't understand, we're telling residents that, things are gonna level off. Leveling off, does that mean we're gonna stay at the $9 per cubic foot per 100 cubic foot? Because then we're still charging our residents 84% times higher than what we're being billed from Montrose Improvement District.
All we can do is look at what the actual expenses are. And then we have to have an actual revenue source based on the actual usage. Then we can determine what that rate is going to be. And again, that's the discussion the board has to have. I can show you the facts. I can show you the numbers. And then see what we need to be at a balanced budget. Against water is very different from taxes, as we all know. If it's a rainy year, people use less water. If it's dry,
I'm
people.
not talking about usage, I'm
Okay.
talking about rates.
What
Usage, everybody knows the usage, but it's the rate. We're charging our residents a rate of $9 per 100 cubic feet, but we're only being billed $4.94. So it's
are you looking at Montrose or are you looking at Peekskill or both?
Montrose.
Okay, but we actually buy water from both, and then for Montrose, we get a surcharge too. That rate is without the surcharge.
Right, the surcharge is $3 per.
Correct,
per
correct. All I can tell you is there's revenue expenses, okay, I'm trying to give you a balanced budget. That's all it is. So I'm not trying to overcharge anybody to do that.
I understand. I'm just trying to make sense of it. And like I said, residents that are concerned, it is an, extremely high amount. The increase was significant and they're concerned, and I'm just trying to get to the bottom of it.
Oh, absolutely. And like I said, when we finish this financial season, we go into the next budget season. The same residents should, we'll let them know when the meeting is going to take place, and we can go through the rates and see what the rates are going to be. Maybe the rates can come down. I don't know, because we got to see what the actual amounts from the Indian Point comes in now.
Can I just ask you, I know Steve said 494, and then you said something, the surcharge that Montrose charges is how much?
I gotta look at
You
the
said
actual
about
bill.
$3, right?
It's $3.37 per 1,000 gallons.
Okay,
It's about half of what the regular rate is.
so you would add the $4.94 and the $3.37?
No.
The
It's
surcharge is
$3.37 is per 1,000 gallons.
Okay, per thousand, okay. All right, and then, so that would be added on top of the $4.94, whatever
Whatever.
that,
you said.
whatever conversion is, okay.
But, and the surcharge is not on the total usage, it's only on
The excess,
the
Yes,
excess.
correct,
absolutely,
that's
yeah.
correct. Mhm,
All right, some work to do.
absolutely.
Anything else? Steve?
No, thank you.
Dan, what do you have? Trustee Dan? Anything?
I'm good for tonight, thank
Okay, all right, thanks. Trustee Kylie, what do you have?
It's always quiet tonight.
I know, right?
I just want to wish everybody a happy new year. Thank you, Mr. Singer, for coming in and giving us that presentation. I think it's very important that the community knows how much you guys give and how much time you give and how little you get back. Thank you for coming in. We, as a village, you know, we're moving forward with our, we're building and trying to grow with our development. And you know, we have a couple public hearings coming up. This one for lot coverage is important to a lot of people in our area. And I want people to come in and say what they need to say to make it clear that this is what they want, this is what they don't want. And it's important for us as you know, board members to know what the public wants, and we need to hear from them. And I'm excited to hear from them. I know that the accessory apartment thing is important as well. And you know, just email us with your concerns if you can't make it. And you know, that's why we're here. And because the village is moving forward with these developments and it's exciting. And if you want to get involved, please do. That's why we're here. So once again, Happy New Year, and that's all I have.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, Peter, I am sorry, but I didn't bring the letter from the resident commending you for working with them, and you know, I'm gonna bring it to the next meeting because I think when people should be recognized. So I know you're working hard. I know there's a lot going on and there's a lot to do, but you're really catching up on backlogs and different things that weren't addressed. So, you know, I was happy to see a resident write a letter. So I will bring that to read that next month. And the only other thing I have is I wish everyone a very happy and healthy new year. Healthy is the key. It's very important. And once again, thank you, Eric and Barbara and Patty, for coming to shed some light on what's actually going on in the community with our ambulance corps and, you know, all the work that you guys do. We appreciate it. And any comments from the floor?
Eileen? Okay, Eileen, I'm sorry. No, we got,
Diane.
that's all, we got Eileen too. Eileen, hold on one second, okay?
Will do.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, Diane Tangent, 240 Catherine Street, Buchanan. First of all, it was very enlightening, the presentation that was made this evening by the EMTs, and I didn't know any of that. I thank you for it too. I actually came for a couple of requests, and one was, could we possibly have a spigot put at Monroe Park for next year? I belong to the beautification committee, and this does bring up the water. And every other day, I and everyone else brought 3 gallons from their home down to the village. First of all, you have to schlep it. That's not easy. And it cost us to do that. I didn't mind. I love my village. That's why I belong to the beautification committee. But I would like to ask for that. My bill was over $300, and there's 2 people who live in our house. And I did notice it went from $7 to $9. And if there's anything that can be done to lower that.
Absolutely.
And we did do a lot of watering because we had been planting. So
Mhm.
I attributed it to that. That was the first thing. And I was hoping that by next summer, a spigot could be, I understand there is water at Monroe Park. And it doesn't have to be anything other than a spigot. Doesn't have to be anything. It could be put in a, indiscreet area that no one would, use it, that wasn't authorized to use it. The other thing I'd like to ask about is a bathroom at Lent Cove, not even necessarily the bathrooms that are there being remodeled. Has anyone ever thought of a porta potty? That's well maintained, and I underline well maintained, because we do use that more now that the walkway comes right up to Buchanan. I know I usually park at Lens Cove. When you're finished walking for, 3 miles or so, sometimes you'd like to use the bathroom. I don't like porta potties, but I do think, most places there are some type of facilities, bathroom facilities in parks, and I think that would be a good thing. I did listen just recently to the 2 meetings. In fact, I listened today to the on YouTube, and I used it on my phone. They're not on YouTube that I can watch on the television right now. I don't know why. The last meeting I could see on YouTube on TV is the November workshop meeting.
Yeah, on TV is,
Who's
the TV is public access. On YouTube, it's YouTube, you can do it anytime. So it depends how fast, I could talk to, a videographer, regards to when was the last thing was posted. You have to post that separately on the TV
That's what I
channel.
was wondering, how,
Yeah.
what's the process? Does the village have to do something? So I had to watch it on my phone.
Yes,
By going on to villageofbuchanan.com.
Right.
And I did, and I watched.
Some
it.
videos that are on Mike Minor's channel itself.
They also
and
been
some are on the village.
they should also been transferred over. So we talked to Mike. Mike is not here tonight, but we'll talk to Mike.
Watch it
Yeah.
on my television
Yes.
rather than watching it on my phone.
Yep.
And I did, I was very interested in the IMA, you use all these acronyms, and I don't usually always know what they are, but once you start talking, I do understand that it was about sewage treatment plant. And I also am very much in favor, as I understood what you had originally explained, was that we have money from various funds to upgrade and to expand our sewage treatment plant. And if we utilize that money, then it would enable us to entice more developments. Okay, well, I'm in favor of that. That's all I wanted to say. I wanted to know the status of the luxury apartments, but I did also watch. That's also called what's that one called? The
AMS.
Yeah, the AMS. And someone did mention that it wouldn't bring in a great deal of taxes maybe, but I do think that it would enhance our village, and the merchants might benefit from that. It might even bring in, when you bring people, you're going to bring the things that people need, and it could really enhance our village a great deal. The Carbone property, I understand that's gonna be 50, they're asking for 51 units
Correct.
plus commercial, okay. Oh, I did love the sewage treatment video that you and Todd did, that the mayor and Todd did. I thought it was so informative. And I felt like, boy, we've left our sewage treatment in very good hands. And I also like the presentation by the wallboard company. I have never known what they do other than, produce wallboard. I know people who work there. I've never been to the plant. Do they pay taxes or a pilot program?
Tax.
Good. Well, we need to use those taxes for Broadway because it's their trucks that really destroyed Broadway. It's definitely their trucks.
Mhm.
Okay, and I thank you all. I really do. I just find the meetings very informative. I think you're doing a wonderful job, and thank you.
Thank
Just to
you.
let you
Oh,
know,
Happy New
Mrs.
Year.
This is Cannon. When the wallboard company did an expansion in 2000 and, I want to say 8, part of the contingency that they were to do was if they did have an adverse effect to our roads within 10 years, they would have repaved everything. But there wasn't a market depreciation of the roadway because Con Ed wouldn't repave it at the time when they put in a duct bank down there. So we did talk to them about that, and they did approve, and they did agree that if they damaged our road, they would fix it, but the time had expired, self-expired.
Oh, because the one side is fine,
Yes, that's
right,
right.
the side going out,
Yeah.
which
No.
is when there would be full. Plus it'd be full, and it's probably empty.
That's too
Yeah.
bad.
And I think that the one side was recently,
Once I was done because of Con Ed.
hey,
because of
because
Con Ed
kind of
did the-
ripped it all up.
Yeah, they did a gas line, but back 15 years ago, Con Ed put in a substation underground. And they only wanted to repave half of it, we made them pay all of it, and it was the same time that the gypsum plant was doing an expansion for synthetic gypsum. And we had put that into their site plan and their approval process, that if they had damage there, and if we could show that they damaged it over a certain amount of time, that they would be liable to fix it, and they never damaged it over what was normal.
All right.
So we do think about those things.
Oh, I'm
the planning-
sure.
the planning board, the
Yeah.
planning
Oh, I'm
process.
sure you do. I just wanted to
I got
say
it.
that I think
appreciate
about
it.
it too.
We'll be having further conversations with them too. And about the spigot, I find that very interesting because it was not so indiscreet last November when I tripped over it. It's,
Oh,
so
there wasn't, and that's what you tripped over, a spigot that was available.
it's recessed into the ground
There's a box, yeah.
Yeah.
and the cover to it was up.
Oh,
So that's one of the things I flew on, plus a paver that was sticking up. So it's not so indiscreet when the cover's up.
well, maybe it has to be put in an entirely different spot.
Yeah, you know, but we do, you guys, and I thought I had mentioned to somebody on the beautification, you can use that, you can take that off, but it's you have to be careful, so we might have to get some type of a pressure valve, I'm not sure, because
Correct.
the pressure that comes in there is so strong, and it's where you could actually hook a hose up to it. And to, take a garden hose and take it all over, and you could even really technically cross the street if a car goes over a garden hose, I mean,
No, I want one that you can use.
Okay.
You're not gonna trip over and it's not gonna be. too
Thank
hard
you,
to
I
use.
appreciate it. All right, good, so that's something for us to work on. And also, I want to bring it to the board and you didn't mention this time, the board and also to the beautification committee. We have a few designs for the signs coming into the village, so in the spring, we'll be installing that, but, I'm gonna bring that in front of the board and also the beautification committee for their input. Okay, thank you. And
All right.
Eileen, we didn't forget you.
Okay, Eileen.
Thank you, Diane.
Okay, I have two questions. Number one, Teresa, how does Kathy Hochul's veto of the spent fuel rods that are in water affect our taxes? That's number one. And number two, since she passed human composting, how does that affect residents in a village of Buchanan?
Yes,
compost.
they passed
They
the
passed
other
a law.
day,
Yeah.
the law, the governor signed it about human composting.
What does that mean?
You're
Exactly what it sounds.
That's what it sounds like.
I just want to see if somebody would explain it.
You're basically wrapped and put into a reusable container, and the body decomposes within a month by using wood chips and mulch and what have you. But it's got to be done in a licensed facility.
Oh, it has to be done in a licensed facility? This is not like, burying you on your property?
Do we have a choice?
No, you have to be an approved
There'd be no copy.
funeral home that specializes in that type of
Better make a local law.
service.
Okay, all right.
Kind of
Fancy.
goes back to that book, Soil and Green. when
Soil and
that I
Green.
was like, oh, dear.
That's over green,
But
yeah.
it's kind of a little, like,
That was a good movie.
When I
Well,
heard
at least
that-
we got a laugh on that one. So,
Please, God, I don't know where we're going. Amen
Yeah.
to that.
so Teresa,
reference-
how does the spent fuels, is that part of a pilot? Is that,
No, that
not
doesn't affect
taxed
us
at all?
I mean, actually, when we did the legislation, okay, we specifically stayed away from that. Sandy was all hot on doing the spent fuel pool. She was all hot on doing the rods itself. But the spent fuel pool is temporary, quote unquote temporary. The rods itself, I mean, how, we discussed this when we were doing the legislation. The rods itself, how do you put a value on that? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, maybe.
remember,
There
Yes,
were.
I do remember that. Yes, I know that
No.
you knew
So
what the
we
value was.
specifically focused on, and where the idea originally came from was, I've been working with other communities throughout the country, and we've been trying to get the Stranded Act passed, which is, the federal government, that's a whole nother animal. So in my mind, what I thought, well, these spent fuel tasks, if we could make them real properties. So in my mind, they're like $1.3 million. There's going to be 127 of them. So $1.3 million houses, and there's going to be 127 of them on a pad.
Right.
So we, Stephanie, and I will give her credit because Sandy's group was having a difficult time writing the legislation. Stephanie took it, ran with it, actually wrote the legislation. And it's a miracle that passed in the Senate and in the House. And then I was hesitant to think that Cuomo would sign it, but it was worth a shot. So it was New Year's Eve 2 years ago. And that's when I got the call at 8 o'clock at night from Peter Harcum telling me that the governor had signed that into law. But it's kind of hard for them to kind of argue that because, we know what the value of the task is. And that's how we looked at it. It was a house, $1.3 million house on 2 pads, 127. So that legislation passed. So this does not surprise me that the other one didn't pass. So I know Sandy had mentioned something when we were doing the legislation and we just kind of weren't interested in it because I think that's what held everything up with that a long time ago, because you have to be able to give a value.
And we didn't want to give an excuse to veto it.
Absolutely.
Which is what they did now.
Yeah. So this was the law that was passed, allowed it to be considered as real property. So, but there's that failed with the spent fuel in the pool also. And then think about it, the pool is not gonna be there, I think all the fuel comes out this year. So if you tax the pool's not gonna be there anymore. So we went after the right things for the right reasons.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
All right, thank you, Eileen.
Thanks, Ellen.
Any other comments, questions, anybody on?
No, that's it.
All right. I'd like to make a motion to go into executive session to discuss a contractual issue. And Stephanie, is that part of your executive session or do you have something else?
Nope, that is indeed
Okay.
what I think.
I'd like to add something if I could.
Sure.
I'd like to talk about the IMA with town of Cortland.
That's what
Yeah,
we're
that's
talking
what
about.
I'm
Yeah.
discussing, yeah.
So we're on the same page.
Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. Happy New Year.